Let's start on a positive. Great that London is trying at last, after all these decades, to deal with cycling and to provide proper cycle route provision in London.
Absolutely. I fully agree with all the various cycle commentators that it's a complete step change for cycleway planning in London. And it's an iconic design setting a standard which needs to be pushed north, south, east, west and all the other compass points to give London a true cycle commuting network.
The key question to ask is, will it be safe for a 6-year-old school child or a mother with babies on the back of a bicycle to be able to cycle in central London as a result of these improvements?
That is a very important question, but I would put, even before that, the question of whether it achieves its function of providing the shortest route from A to B. Remember, we were invited by TfL as representatives of the Landscape Institute to comment on the central London cycling grid, and the very first thing we said was a good cycle route must provide the shortest possible route from A to B. So this morning we've looked at the first section which has been opened, which runs from Elephant and Castle to Blackfriars Road. Is that the shortest route?
No, to go left towards Westminster along St George's Road and then back is not the shortest route.
So instead of doing the dogleg along St George's Road and Lambeth Road, they should have cited the route on London Road.
Along London Road, straight from the Elephant to St George's Circus.
In the consultation report, several people suggested that, and TfL's response, rather strangely, was that going along the dogleg would take only an extra 2 seconds when travelling south and an extra 15 seconds when travelling north. How can there possibly be that difference?
I'd question the figure. Yes, possibly for a young cyclist travelling at 15 to 20 miles an hour. Not for a 6-year-old, not for a 68-year-old on a Boris bike like myself. Santander bike.
Also, on the physical design question, do you think it would have been possible to accommodate the cycle superhighway on London Road?
Yes, and here we could talk and investigate areas where that is possible. There are very wide pavements along all of London Road, particularly opposite the Elephant tube station. There is wasted space there. On the west side, and further south it's on the other side of the road, on the east side.
I agree, and the other thing that struck me is, why should it be the cyclists that have the longer route? Wouldn't it have been better to make vehicles do the dogleg and give cyclists the shortest A to B route?
This is leading on to the fact that we should be talking about total street design, and priorities should be for pedestrians, for cyclists, for disabled access wheelchair users, and then for vehicle traffic.
I mean, I was actually quite pleasantly surprised that to a greater extent than I expected, it looks a good place. I mean, especially cycling along St George's Road with the plane trees overhanging the road. It's a very nice place to be, much better than I expected. But I do entirely agree with you that what's needed is street design, which I see as landscape architecture, rather than highway design, which focuses primarily on moving vehicles, which is what I see from all the TfL drawings.
What we need is multidisciplinary planning. What we don't need is single use, single profession planning.
Next question. Do you think that the best international design standards for cycleways have been followed? I mean, of course, the standards that are applied in Holland and in Denmark.
No.
And why not?
Read the Crow, which is the Dutch cycle manual, available in English, and you will find out. I repeat my ambition, which is that, as in Holland, 30 to 40% of all urban journeys should be made by bicycle, and it should be equally safe for the 6-year-old school child, the mother with a baby on the back, and for the old age pensioner to be able to cycle. Cycling in London is not just for lycra wearers.
A particular issue is the bidirectionality of this first section of the cycle superhighway that we looked at. I know that goes against the best Dutch practice. They think that it's safer to have one cycleway in each direction. I do, however, wonder if in this particular section we looked at this morning it might be a special case, because I would expect the cycle traffic to be extremely tidal. And so if you've got 2 lanes going north in the morning and 2 lanes going south in the afternoon, then there is some advantage in that, don't you think?
Railway road planning is on the basis that if the lanes don't meet the traffic flow, you either divert or you provide more lanes. The current lanes are bidirectional, and each lane is undersized. The minimum width in Holland generally is recognised to be 3 metres. These are more like 2.5 metres.
I think a particular issue there is that it's only the vehicular carriageway which has been reorganised. They should have looked at the pedestrian space, the pavements, the sidewalks, as well as the carriageway, as a street design exercise.
Another problem is that there's been a total waste of space in the what might be described as a median strip between the cycleway and the traffic route, the traffic way. Far, far, far too wide, and it's only at bus stops that there should be such widening. All one needs is Paris-style dragon's teeth, which are about 300 mil, 30 centimetres wide.
It does indeed look like a wanton waste of space and expensive paving. I see that it might not have been possible to plant trees there because there's probably a lot of services underneath, but that doesn't mean they couldn't have had any planting. And if you look at the pioneering section of cycle route in Royal College Street in Camden, they have actually placed above ground planters there, and I don't see why there shouldn't have been some really good accommodation for planting to separate the cyclists from the vehicles. Do you think that could have been done?
Yes, it could have been done. We also have problems with the way that the cycle routes have been delivered. Excellent to have chamfered curbs. They're far more bike tyre friendly. Therefore, why don't all the edges have such chamfered curbs? They don't. Another problem is that the route, north-south route, stops at the Elephant and Castle. No connection to the south, and in fact it's a terrible place to be stopping at because it's a very unfriendly place, even though there are improvements happening. What we should be doing is aiming to extend. So why has the route to Penge, which is known as CS6, been scrapped? The answer is all along that North London is favoured because it's seen as embracing the centre, while the story of London is that it's been developing in the east and in the south, in the cheaper areas. And in order to follow through such development, one needs adequate cycle and other infrastructure provision.
It's lovely stuff, that lentil soup, Robert, but it's left my throat with a tickle in it.
Just to explain that we're at Ev Restaurant in Isabella Street, just off the cut, and they do a remarkable lentil soup, but it's clearly left Tom speechless.